Hello, everyone. Today I'm speaking to Faruq McDermott on traditional Islamic understanding of UFOs and the cultural and religious perspective from Islam. Please give us some background about who you are.
Okay, sure. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Just for your listeners out there, I'm just seeking refuge and asking God for protection from Satan, and I'm citing his name, the name of the one who owns all this, according to the Islamic tradition. So my name's Faruq McDermott. It wasn't always. I became Muslim in around 2007, 2006, 2007, around that sort of time. I became Muslim in partly part of a journey where I was trying to figure out if you could travel faster than the speed of light, believe it or not, which ended up leading me to prophecies, which was kind of like the one anomaly that was there. You know, how did people predict the future when it doesn't yet exist? So I ended up researching that, and it led me to the Prophet Muhammad, and ultimately to the Quran, and then to becoming Muslim. There was an aspect of the Quran that really answered a lot of questions. I had some experiences, like many people were probably watching your show. I had some experiences when I was young, anomalous experience, shall we say, ones that didn't really offer a conventional answer from a scientific perspective, or at least at that time a scientific perspective. So those answers remained with me as a youngster all the way through to adulthood, and then I found those answers in the Quran. So that kind of led me to Islam. After that, I spent many years as a preacher and as a TV presenter, and then I became a producer and a director. I couldn't tell you how many hundreds of TV shows, how many hundreds of live hours of TV that I've been involved with, both as a presenter, as a producer. And then I became a director, and then I ran a TV channel. And then I had my own production company where I made TV shows and documentaries on Islam for multiple different TV channels around the world, including kids stuff. I did a lot of kids programming, which was the most cool stuff because I'm a big kid anyway. And that then led me to pursuing Islam academically. I studied this whole time. I've been studying Islam, and I ended up in University in Medina. It's a prestigious university, one of the most prestigious in the world, I would say, for Islamic studies. And that I was there when before COVID hit. I was there in 2017. I was studying Arabic at the time with the hope of doing my thesis on Islam and UFOs. That was what I wanted to pursue as my study. That was in 2017, and just my luck that while I was wanting to pursue that, we had three major revelations in 2017, namely the To the Stars Academy came out, then you had the Navy patents, and then you had the big blockbuster story, I think it was in the New York Times, regarding ATIP or ORSAP, if you want to call it that. And then COVID hit, and I've continued my studies in this area since then. And here we are today on your show.
Right. So, could you please give people some background on how Islam intersects with non-human intelligence and UFOs?
Sure. So Islam, to put it simply, from the very inception of mankind, Adam, as we call them, Adam and Eve, or Hua in Arabic, but Adam and Eve. Adam, peace be upon him, when he was first created, there was another creation, according to Islam, and that creation was the jinn. In the Quran, Allah tells us that He created mankind from clay, and before that, He created jinn from a smokeless fire. Now, if you want to look at the Arabic, smokeless fire, it's like a plasma. So these creatures, they're called al-jinn. So in the Quran has been sent to two entities, that have to obey, otherwise they're being sinful. So dogs, cats, all of these creatures, they will not be punished for any wrong that they do. They're not accountable for their actions. But mankind and jinn kind are accountable for their actions. So from an Islamic perspective, the jinn, which are the phenomena that operate the UFO craft that you see flying around, they're also responsible for the ghosts and the spirit stories, and those who utilize black magic and do voodoo and things like that. It's these creatures that they're utilizing. They're an unseen creature according to Islam. The word jinn actually derives from something unseen. It comes from what's hidden inside the womb. So it's an unseen thing. These creatures, they aren't like us entirely, you know, even though they're accountable for their actions, but they live in a world parallel to ours, if you want to say that, or at least in an unseen world. These creatures, because they're older than us and they were here before us, there's an arrogance, and according to Islam, from the very beginning, they opposed us. There was one, he was called Iblis, and I think in Christian narrative, they call him Lucifer. They class him as like a fallen angel, but Islam separates the angels and the jinn. They're two different creatures. So he was a jinn who was up with the angels. He was very pious, very kind, and he worshipped Allah. But when Adam was created, he took us as an enemy, and his children as an enemy. He said, "Oh, you know, I'm going to mislead them. I'm going to misguide them, and I'm going to come at them from every angle." And uniquely, there's a verse in the Quran where he said that I will make them slit the ears of cattle, which, as part of my research, I found fascinating that it would highlight specifically, you know, mutilation of cattle as part of his plan against us, which I found really fascinating. You know, perhaps one of the earliest mentioning of cattle mutilation, you know, is from the time that Adam was created. But anyway, that's just a side point. So these creatures, the jinn, there's a couple of characteristics that they have. One of them being unseen, so you can't see them, but they're also they come in shape-shifting form. So they'll often take the shape of a black dog, snakes, or anything in between. Human beings, they can look as if they are a real human being. There's one very famous story from Islam where one of the companions of the Prophet, he was guarding the charity. They'd collected some charity and they were going to distribute it. This charity, a man came at night and he took from it, he stole from it. And the companion grabbed him and said, "What are you doing? This is, you know, it's charity. You don't steal from charity. You don't steal anyway, but, you know, you don't steal from charity." And he asked for an excuse. He said, "Please forgive me, you know, let me away with it. I've got, you know, people who are in need," and so on and so forth. So that day, the Prophet saw his companion. He said, "What happened? Who was your guest last night? Who was the one that come and visit you last night?" And he said, "Oh, a man came. He said he'll be back. Your companion will come back." So next night again, he did. He returned, and this happened twice more, until he said, "Well, I'm going to take you now. I'm going to punish you because you know you keep stealing. You're not listening." And to cut a long story short, it was the Satan. It was Shaitan. It was Iblis taking the form of a human being. So they shapeshift. They can look like humans, identical. You wouldn't be able to tell them different from a human being. They fly. It's another characteristic they have. They fly around the earth, and the description given that they can travel in an instant and they can move objects in an instant. One example in the Quran, it talks about Prophet Solomon. And Solomon, he was, by the permission of God, given sort of supremacy over them. He could control them and tell them what to do. And this isn't normal, you know, man, because of our weakness and the fact we can't see them. Generally, we don't have control or power over these creatures. We can't see them. We don't know what they're doing. But he, by permission of God, he was given sort of supremacy over them, and he controlled them. And they used to dive in the sea for him. That's what it says in the Quran. They're every builder and diver. So another two characteristics apart from flying is that they build and then they can dive. And their buildings, God says in the Quran, that if you traverse the earth, you'll see examples of them around the earth. So one could argue that perhaps the pyramid could be an example of that. Some of the sites in South America, like I think it's Pumapunku, you could perhaps argue that that sort of site where they've got strange like stone carvings, and some even look like the stones literally molded around, which is unusual, like a polymer almost, but it's a stone. So it's very bizarre. One could argue that these are examples of the jinn and their building capabilities.
I have a question about this. This is important. Sure. Okay, so one of the things we're concerned about is the respect of people's beliefs. So I want to emphasize this for people. Are the jinn widely and completely accepted by people with Islamic beliefs?
Yeah, it would be that if you were to deny it, it's so clear that if you were to deny that the jinn existed, that you would, it would be like a factor of excommunication. It's kind of like being a mathematician but not believing in numbers. You know, it's that clear. It's like saying I'm a Christian but I don't believe in God. You know, it's just one can't work with the other. So the issue of the jinn is so clear and so embedded in the Quran. There's so many examples. There's in fact an entire chapter literally called Al Jinn, and it's a story of some jinn who saw the Prophet, peace be upon him, reciting some Quran, and they're able to, in this chapter it talks about their ability to travel through the heavens, which was something I was going to get to later on, but they've got some strange ability where they're able to traverse different aspects of the heavens and earth. In Islam, we don't say that there's just this universe. We have multiple universes, and it seems that these creatures can traverse them in some way or another. It doesn't explain how and the types of technology they're using, but the ability to do so is definitely mentioned in Quran. So for an entire chapter to be named after them, to have a whole narrative talking about their history with mankind, how some of mankind have joined forces with them, it mentions it in the Quran. And Allah specifically mentions that those who joined forces with them to misguide the rest of mankind and to hide the truth will receive a painful punishment for
Okay.
for hiding the truth. So if you
So,
deny it, you're not a
yeah.
Muslim.
Okay. And that's what's important here is that if someone has, um, these beliefs and they're coming and presenting to someone, I've seen non-human intelligence, someone needs to understand that this is part of the Islamic tradition. So I
Yeah,
just wanted to clarify that. So is that basically the context? Like if someone came to their religious leader with the Muslim faith, and they said, "I've seen a non-human intelligence," that it would be said, "This is a jinn."
pretty much. Yeah. Even if, let's say, for argument's sake, it came in the form of an angel, because the Quran specifically mentions an incident on the Day of Judgment. See, the Quran, because it claims to be the word of God, it's therefore outside of time, because we don't believe God is part of time. He created it. It's a creation according to Islamic understanding. So because the beginning and end of everything, the beginning of time and the end of time, before mankind and after mankind, is all one event to God. So the beginning and end is just one event. Um, like a computer game designer, the beginning end is all one thing to him. He created the whole thing. So with that in mind, God talks about the Day of Judgment as if it's already happened. And he tells us of a point on the Day of Judgment where the angels are brought forward. And they're asked and they're questioned. And they said, was it you, that the people used to worship? Because some people said, we saw angels, they visited us, they told us this and they told us that. So they say, no, it wasn't us. Verily, that we didn't do that. In fact, it was the jinn that they used to worship. So if a Muslim was to come and say, oh, an angel visited me last night and told me you don't have to pray, you don't have to fast, you don't have to give charity, you don't have to be good anymore, this would be regarded as a jinn experience, an experience pertaining to the jinn. Likewise, if a snake was to come and speak to a human being, or a spirit was to come, or a shadow person with fiery eyes, or an alien looking creature with big black eyes and a short body, we would put that down to a jinn experience.
Okay.
So, and because of their shape-shifting capabilities, i.e., if they were to come as a short grey or greenish creature, it wouldn't be a problem for Muslims to accept that. Be like, yep, that's fine. We understand what it is and the nature of what it's up to. So yeah, no problem.
Um, and yeah, so that was the important point. So the faith already accepts these things, and that
Yeah,
may actually lead to much faster acceptance and healing after an incident. Is that
sure.
the impression that one could get from that?
Yeah, I would say a disclosure event. Let's say, for argument's sake, right? We see how far it's come. I mean, people have been part of this journey since like the 90s. I'd consider myself following this story since the 90s. Where we are now, I don't think people realize how far we've come. And if you spend too much time on social media, you can see that a lot of people become complacent. Some people are angry, fed up, and upset, and their patience has wore thin. But there's some fantastic researchers in our past from ufology, not from the Islamics. There's so much to be said about the Islamic side, but that's for another day. Let's say that the idea of where we are now is unheard. Like, it was unexpected to come this quickly, and I think that if we do have, even if it is just disclosure of visitation, for example, and they claim it and it goes out in the news and everybody hears it, it's going to cause shock for even Muslims. And you find that where I live in the UK, the predominant ethnic background of Muslims is from, I think you regard them as Indian subcontinent, from the Indian subcontinent. We call them Asian, but I think that means something else in America. So from the Indian subcontinent, when they hear the word jinn or shaitan, they predominantly have that from the possession phenomena, which is another aspect of the phenomena. But they connect it with that mostly. So their thinking and understanding of UFOs may be slightly different. So when that comes down, it's going to raise a lot of questions. But I would say that a lot of people haven't researched it and don't really know. So someone like yourself, who's a researcher for many years in this topic, you're going to understand this, and myself included. But even they're going to think, like, what where do we stand on this? But from a what's the right word? From a philosophical perspective, as Muslims, there's no problem, and hopefully when the news hits, there won't be too much of a shock for mankind. I think that religious folk are in a very strong position here regarding disclosure, because the idea of something unseen existing and being alive is not foreign to us. Whereas for people from a scientific only background, where they kind of like separate their mind from only dealing with what they're able to see, it's going to be a huge shock. It's going to be like the white blood cell. What the white blood cell, I don't think it's aware of its surroundings, and even though it's alive, I don't think it fully understands its purpose in creation. And the idea of it living inside of human would sound very foreign to it, even though some white blood cells may have seen, the old injection going. It's part of my book. I've got a chapter which is like a thought experiment about the microbial world and mankind. And likewise, this is what's going on here. We've got such a strange example of where we exist and there's something outside of it that we're completely and utterly unable to fully comprehend. Just like the white blood cells are unable to fully comprehend the human being. Likewise, I think it's going to be a real difficult time for people to accept that. And hopefully people who believe, whose minds are a bit more geared towards accepting this type of thing, I think we can help those other people come to terms with it. Like you said, it's going to be a huge shock, and hopefully we'll all play our part to help people, understand this a bit better.
So you said that even for people who believe in the jinn, it'll be a shock. I'm actually surprised by that. I would think it would be like, well, of course it's the jinn. So why do you think that it would still be a shock for them?
I'll bring an example from the Quran, and a story from Islam. This, and it's also in the Bible. When Musa we call him, when Moses went up to the mountain to meet with God, he fasted, right? Because according to Islamic tradition, he fasted. I don't know the ins and outs of the Christian story, but he fasted, and ultimately he ended up spending longer time than the children of Israel realized. So while he was gone, they ended up worshipping the golden calf, right? So while he was on the mountain and God gave him the tablets, God told him, "Oh Musa, the children of Israel have began worshipping the golden calf." And Musa, he heard the story, but even though he heard it, it didn't affect him as much until he went down. And when he got down to the mountain and he saw the actual event happening, he threw the tablets down that God gave him. Now, we can't imagine that a prophet of God would disrespect scripture, but the shock and the realization of the reality of what God told him and seeing it with his own eyes was different than when he heard it. I think mankind, we learn a great story from the Quran, in that hearing is not like seeing. So when people hear about something, yeah, okay, cool, it sounds great. But when there's a realization, people end up reevaluating reality and what's going on. So for someone who isn't really strong and isn't really praying, hearing that these things are actually real, and it's not just like a thing that you've sort of mentally relied on, it becomes real then. And then there becomes, real consequences. Oh, those things are real. What else is actually real about the Quran or about the, whatever religious aspect? So I think that side of it is where the real shock's going to come. It's a true realization, and then having real consequence, that comes from that realization. Yeah, I'll pray today and I won't tomorrow. That will stop. People think, whoa, there's a reality to this, and I've got to take it serious. Hope that
So
helps. Does
yes,
that make sense?
yes. So there's what you're saying. On the one hand, there's the understanding of something. On the other hand, there's encountering what you
Yeah,
understand. Like
yeah.
we know
Like
that.
Moses. Yeah,
Yeah, another example I could give is, a volcano is dangerous, and that if it erupts, it would be pretty risky for you to be nearby. Another understanding of, how dangerous it is the lava and the damage and all that. But to go and be next to one as it erupts would be a very different experience. So
yep,
I get that.
100%. Mm.
Great. So
So,
I've I really appreciate that you came to talk to me today about this and to
sure.
provide some clarity and reassurance to people. I do want to know who someone who follows the tradition of Islam can go to within the group if they have an experience and want to have a conversation. Who are the leaders?
Well, there isn't really. There's a few of us together at the moment who are preparing, shall we say. We are in contact with scholars and sort of academic leadership amongst the Muslim community, and we have discussed this at length. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, a lot of institutes are quite slow to react, and so there's a few of us who are trying to, kind of speed things up a little bit. I would say that if you would like to, you can share my name and my Twitter on if you want to open a platform, and perhaps there, if you guys have anybody come to you from the Muslim faith or who are looking for questions or whatever, or anybody for that matter, we would be happy to accommodate and help them, guide them through it. But hopefully soon, and I mean, by the end of the year, we'll have. I've got an organization that I'm kind of in between setting up at the moment. It's called the Islamic Research into the Exotic Phenomena. And what we're trying to do with this particular group is not only provide academic resources for people to research and understand who the jinn are, what they do, and their deep history with mankind. I mean, we're only talking about ufology. That's just one aspect of it, and it goes very far back. And there's even evidence of, how can I put this, like a tablet type technology existing only 800 years ago, and that's from an Islamic source that I've got. So we're doing that side of it. I think we need to push a little bit more to provide sort of support groups, and hopefully by year end we'll have that side of it as well. So that's IREP, Islamic Research into Exotic Phenomena. It's a new thing that we've been working on for a while. It's just we haven't really gone public with it yet. So kind of like mentioning it now on your show. So yeah, hopefully soon.
Well, I appreciate that you're making that effort. In the last few minutes, do you want to tell people any final messages about, how they can handle their experiences in the context of religion and the tradition of Islam?
Sure. I would like to share briefly with people that a few hundred years ago, if someone told you there was tiny little creatures alive inside you that were traveling around your body and maintaining it and keeping you alive, a lot of people would have balked at that and said you're crazy. And mankind got over that. We got through that. The existence of a microbial world was a big discovery, and something which people found difficult to accept in the beginning, yet they accepted it. Why? Because the science was there. Unfortunately, with this aspect, we're not talking about a minute creature that we can manipulate. Rather, we've got to look at it from the aspect that we are being manipulated. And therefore, there's a group of mankind who have been active and supportive of that manipulation and hiding of the truth. And this is why this is a little bit different. But if mankind can bounce back from the discovery of creatures that we didn't think existed, I'm sure we can do it again. And I hope that by anybody who wants to take to look at it from that perspective, that the microbial world is there, so there are other worlds with other living creatures in it. If one can accept that, I think we can get through it. If you ever struggle with it, think of it like that. We are on the precipice of big revelations happening, hopefully, and these have been known about for a long time. So yeah, I think we've been brainwashed away from it. We used to believe in spirits and demons and black magic and that all before, and this has been eradicated from us. So I think naturally mankind is okay in believing these things. It's just that we've been brainwashed not to. So I think that the odd thing is not believing in it kind of now. So hopefully, with a little bit of evidence coming out and some people, putting what matters first, I think that we're going to get through this all right. I don't think people will struggle too much. And if it really is affecting you that much, then go to your fellow man. Mankind is we're supposed to support one another, and these things can be shocking, but when you realize what they are and what they're here for, make no mistake, you'll see yourself in the cosmos as something a little bit more special, because mankind and jinn, we're both special. Both of us are, and both of us are creation, and both of us will return back. We're both alive and we will both die. So don't be afraid of them. They're not as powerful as people make out, but that's for another talk. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much again. I do
Thank you.
appreciate that message because I think people who are nervous and afraid, it's good to think that, you can come to someone for support and to try to just rethink the whole thing and do different perspectives and reminders that humans adapt. We love to discover things and we adapt to
Yeah,
those discoveries. So those are all
we
good
do.
messages. Um, so in the last moment, could you just let people know how they can find you?
Sure. If you type in my name, hopefully you can see it there, Faruq McDermott. I'm the only one in the world, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. But I'm sort of active under a handle Irribulent. My previous account got removed. But yeah, if you want to find me and discuss or ask any questions, feel free to do so on Twitter. Hopefully, I'll be a bit more active. And yeah, yeah, I'm your fellow man from mankind, and hopefully I can. It, like I said, the history, the Islamic history of the phenomena is vast, and there's a lot there. And I think often, especially in the West, and I'm guilty of it myself. We tend to look at it from our own lens, and we forget that there's other cultures out there who've known about and got details on and interacted with these things for centuries and centuries. So there's a lot to be learned, and if you're inquisitive enough and you want to learn more, I don't mind sharing some of the research and details that I found, that honestly some of it I think will blow people's minds, man. There's some really interesting stuff out there, and it'll help us cope hopefully a little bit better. So thank you very much for letting me come on your show, by the way. I really enjoyed it. I ain't gonna lie, I've been a little bit nervous, man. It's yeah, first time I've been on a platform other than one that I've been part of. So yeah, a little bit nervous.
Well, I think you did a great job. I know that you have a ton more information for people if anyone's interested. And I truly appreciate, that you came and helped us think about the religious implications and, how we can
Thank
help
you.
people. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. You take care of yourself, and hopefully we'll have another chat one day.
Oh, yeah, I'm planning on it. Thank you to everyone who listened. Appreciate you. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.